Welcome to the show. I'm Megadrew, and in this episode I'll be taking a look at my favourite Atari 2600 arcade ports. The Atari 2600 was originally released as the Atari VCS in 1977. During the console's early years, the arcade industry was really taking off, and being able to play these games at home was just a dream. The arcade versions of a lot of these games were some of the first video games I ever experienced playing, and at the time, producing an accurate representation of the original for the home was a big task. These cartridges varied massively in quality, from amazing technical achievements that went beyond expectations, to rushed conversions leading to nothing but disappointment. Now these are all my own personal choices, and I've considered the quality of the game itself, the accuracy of the port, and of course, my own nostalgia. So let's get this countdown started with my choice for number 20. Now don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware of just how bad this version of Double Dragon is, but it is a scrolling beat 'em up on the Atari 2600, and that in itself is a massive achievement. It's dull and frustrating, and that rendition of the classic Double Dragon theme is enough to send you mad, but it just had to make my list, and this port from 1989 sits at number 20. I've chosen Spy Hunter at number 19, which was released by Sega in 1984. This isn't a bad representation of the original game, and even features the iconic theme song at various points. I don't really think they could have done much more with this version, but unfortunately it didn't hold my attention for too long. At number 18 I've gone with Breakout, and this 1978 home port sticks to the basic gameplay that the original game was renowned for. I will always consider Breakout to be an absolute classic, and this version has everything it needs. Porting Konami's Gyrus to the 2600 must have been quite a difficult task, but in 1984, Parker Brothers released a great port. The controls work very well as you fly into the screen rotating your ship in order to blast enemies and avoid their fire. The game even has a version of the classical music heard in the arcade original, and it's the perfect soundtrack for this classic space battle. That's my choice for number 17. Number 16 is a port of SNK's classic overhead run and gun game, IKARI Warriors, which arrived on the system in 1990. This was another very ambitious game, and while it doesn't quite meet the standards set by ports to other systems, it's still quite fun to play and deserves its spot on my list. At number 15 we have a port of Taito's Space Invaders, which arrived in 1980. This was a quality adaptation of the original arcade game, and one that was a real system seller at the time of its release. We have another absolute classic at number 14, Atari's own Asteroids, which arrived in 1981. The developers were able to recreate the intense shoot-'em-up gameplay of the arcade original, and it's one of the most fondly remembered games on the system. At number 13, I'd chosen the 1982 port of Nintendo's classic platform game, Donkey Kong. The game is lacking a bit in the visual department, and it only features 2 looping stages, but the game does retain the quality gameplay found in the original. It's not a patch on the version released for the NES a few years later, but it's still a lot of fun to play. It's Athletics at number 12, with a port of Konami's Track and Field, which arrived in 1984. This is a pretty faithful conversion of the original game, and features 6 events for you to compete in. The cartridge was originally bundled with a special controller that helped replicate the arcade controls more accurately. At number 11 I've chosen Dig Dug, an impressive port of Namco's arcade game that arrived on the system in 1983. The game captures what made the arcade version so much fun as you tunnel through each stage in an attempt to blow up or crush your enemies. Moon Patrol is my choice for number 10, and this conversion of the IREM arcade game was released in 1983. You take control of a Moon Patrol vehicle, and it's your mission to destroy the enemies and avoid obstacles. It's a simple game that requires great skill and timing, and this version of the game is a great port of the original. I've gone for High Speed Racing at number 9 with Pole Position, which arrived in 1983. This was a visually impressive game. The main vehicle and the backgrounds look fantastic, and although the detail in the opponent's cars is minimal, it still looks great overall. I used to love playing the arcade original, and this version did a great job of bringing that experience to the home console. At number 8 I've chosen Rampage, a 1989 port of the classic game that has you destroying entire cities. All 3 original characters are included, and this port managed to capture the chaos that made the original arcade game so much fun. Sometimes the most basic games are some of the best, and that's exactly why I chose Missile Command at number 7. The game doesn't do anything that impressive, especially when it comes to the visuals, but as the intensity of each wave increases, you can't help but become totally immersed in this Atari 2600 classic. At number 6 I've chosen the 1982 port of the fixed screen shoot 'em up Centipede. It's another very basic game in regards to the visuals, but it does a great job of replicating the gameplay of the original. At number 5, I've chosen Ms. Pac-Man, which arrived in 1983. This was such a massive improvement over the system's port of the original Pac-Man game. It still has its flaws, but this conversion is fantastic and is still a lot of fun to play. At number 4 I've chosen this very impressive port of Capcom's Commando, which arrived on the system in 1988. The game looks incredible, plays well, and has all of the explosive action of the original arcade game. One of my earliest video game memories was seeing Atari Star Wars in the arcade, so it's no surprise that this impressive port would feature so high on my list. This is such an amazing conversion of the original, and features the battle against TIE fighters, the Death Star surface and trench run, all before you fire those proton torpedoes and go home. I've chosen the port of Namco's Galaxian at number 2, and this version arrived on the system in 1983. Visually, the game is very impressive, faithfully recreating both the look and feel of the original. It's my favourite shoot 'em up on the system, and definitely one of the Atari 2600's greatest arcade ports. At number 1, I've chosen the 1987 port of IREM's Kung Fu Master. I couldn't believe it when I first saw this. I didn't think the Atari 2600 had the power to produce such an awesome port of this classic beat-em-up, but I was totally wrong. It's not just the visuals that make this so impressive. The game moves very smoothly, meaning all of the well-timed kicks and punches usually land in the right place at the right time. They managed to recreate so much of the original arcade game here, and although there were better versions available on other systems, there's no denying just how good this port of Kung Fu Master is. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below and subscribe to the channel for future content.